Hari explained that it was a dungeon break, and when that happened, a lot of demonic elements came out and infected that land, and crops never grew on such lands. The Onum Plains were an important granary, which was why that was a critical situation, and their spreading demonic energy was infecting that ground. Leon asked for the solution. She answered that to purify the infection and to clear the dungeon as soon as possible, they needed to get rid of the dungeon completely. Leon replied that he understood, and the infected land and the growth of the gate were the problems, so they should call their forces. The next day, when the time limit for the raid of those small fry or whatever was over, he would personally get inside. But before that, he couldn't do any military activities in another's territory as he pleased. So first, he needed to get permission from the king of that nation. Hari replied that it was fine. Leon stated that there was a legitimate process and rules for everything and how they could call themselves honorable knights when they didn't abide by the laws of their nation. So hurry up and send those words to their king. Lee thought that Leon was worse than him. But in the end, they talked to the president. After that, Hari went to Leon and said that she had made preparations as he had told her to, and then she asked if he wanted to use that straw doll for his plan. Leon replied that their precious land was infected, so they needed to purify that land. She asked how to do that with the doll. He looked outside and asked if those were the wives who had made the dolls. She agreed and thought that the people who made the dolls were to be women who had given birth. Leon appreciated it and told everyone to just show him the dolls they had made. Hari thought that it was like a doll-making competition had opened up in the middle of their plans. Leon took one doll and said that it was impossible, calling that metaphysical eccentric body a doll, and then he tore that doll. He then did the same with some other dolls and said, "Didn't they give birth to babies?" After touching many dolls, his eyes caught an old woman who asked how many children she had given birth to. The lady replied that she had given birth to 12. Leon commented on the origin of life of a living patriot, personally sending knights with a medaka and a gift, but due to the situation he couldn't do such, so he asked for forgiveness. He then kissed on her hand, took that doll to the infected land, and by placing it there, he burned a candle as well. After doing something, he said that the conditions had been met. He took out a glass and said to the mother of that abundant land that the people of that earth were offering her the following harvest, so she should just receive it. The cup started filling with water. Hari was shocked to see that. The sun was rising, and a red light was ringing the clouds, marking a new day, but it was a special start for that world. Lee, a commoner, watched as water droplets went inside the doll. A man commented on how it could be. Then Leon greeted the Mother Earth, Tamer, the god of life and abundance. The doll stood up and said that it had been a while. Tamer spoke about how the new land was also being invaded by evil and that the land was contaminated. Leon agreed and said that there were also evil species on that land, but there wasn't divinity there. So he was afraid the lowly and vulgar swine might sully her eyes. Tamer replied that ignorance and greed couldn't always be judged as sins as they were built-in characteristics of mortals, and then she asked what he was planning to do. Leon answered that it wasn't hard to blend in among the swordsmen, but the authority of a conqueror was divine, and he would ensure that duty and authority could be on equal grounds there. He would teach the ignorant and lead them to the right path until a new pantheon arose on that earth. Tamer asked him if he had a favor to ask of her, as they were always ready to help. Leon said to her that the free citizens of that earth were suffering because of an evil energy, and he was certain that wasn't something she desired, but just to heal and purify that land. Tamer told Leon that he was the head of her temple, and that the world's earth was not her body. She would spread her divinity there and substitute that thirsty earth with her flesh. She then made a drop of water fall and said that from there, all the things that could walk would be his ally. Leon told those humans to watch and learn, as they were ignorant and couldn't learn and didn't know that the world was blessed with divinity. Giving birth and prospering was the righteous duty of a living being. The whole area there grew up. Leon continued that the fertile earth was the proof of an eternal promise. Then Lee got angry and told everyone not to be fooled, as crops grown using magic were poisonous, and he was sure they knew that. Leon replied that those were crops blessed with divinity, and how could Lee dare to judge that as poison? Lee also expressed anger at Tamer, the doll as well. Leon said that he could forgive ignorance only once and not to tarnish the goddess with his flippant tongue. Lee was shocked and thought that it couldn't happen, and his plan was about to be ruined because of Leon. Lee couldn't let that happen, and he would expose the blatant lies of Leon. He then said that they still needed to prove that, hoping that Leon would cooperate for the sake of people who would be eating that. He thought that he would frame Leon as a fraud. Then he said that he would provide the appraiser. A man came and said that he would begin. And as he saw, he commented that the quality was so rare, and all the rice was of a rare rank, cursed with tier 3 diseases and even cancer. Hari asked if that was for real. Kim instructed someone to go and get a pot from the chief's house. As he cooked the rice, he said that it was basically a strengthener and questioned how mere rice could be the equivalent of a strengthener, and its worth was 3 million won per bottle. Hari came to him with big news. He told her to finish chewing before talking. She ate the rice in her mouth and said that she got curious and ate a bug and got a buff. All were shocked to hear that. Kim thought that if that blessing was really all over the land, then it wasn't weird if all living things were blessed as well. And then he ordered all to get as many as they could, and they went into the gate with full buffs. Demira called him and said that it seemed like she had done what she needed to do there, so she should get back. Leon replied that he had and never would, and just forgot the divine love she had given them. She asked him to allow her to give him one last lecture to just make sure he fed himself, and then the doll fell there. Hari came to him and asked what that was. He replied that it was divine power and there was no god in that world. She replied that she wasn't sure about that. Leon said that a proper life and world were made with divine power, and US Earthlings better keep that in mind. And now the soldiers were full, so they would get inside the gate. A man asked Lee if that was fine and expressed concern that at that rate, there would be a problem with their plan. Lee was angry at Leon and thought about where he came from. If it weren't for him, the government wouldn't have had a choice but to listen to their requests. He wished Leon would just die in the gate. He then got an idea and told the boy that he didn't have to worry and that the gate had already been somewhat raided. The boy agreed and mentioned that the middle was a bit hard, but there was only one rank, which was Hari. Lee said that the survivor was probably a blessing-type buffer, and he bet Leon would be useless when it came to combat, and that meant they would definitely fail. Inside the gate, there was a monster that couldn't be defeated using ordinary means. As they entered, they found themselves in a cave and proceeded forward. Leon mentioned that the gates were closed either if they cleared the quest or defeated the boss, or he enjoyed dueling with the boss. Hari thought that she was unable to tell him that they usually ganged up on them. As they moved forward, they encountered skeletons. Ari mentioned that those people had tried to clear the dungeon before, but it seemed like there were a lot more monsters than they had thought, realizing that it was characteristic of that dungeon. While the number of monsters usually decreased as they defeated them with most gates, in the case of skeletons, zombies, or even demons in special cases, as long as the boss was alive, they would respawn constantly. Leon commented that it seemed interesting and that meant things would only end if they defeated the boss, indicating that it must be the boss or those boss dungeons. She said that it was most likely that, and that there was probably a necromancer controlling the skeletons. Just as she grasped that the dungeon break had started, they all began to feel strange. Kim felt that Lee should have informed them if there was something like that ahead of them. Suddenly, a monster riding a horse with an infinite number of skeletons was heading towards them. One of them commented that there were a lot of skeletons. Another suggested distributing the potions. Kim advised focusing on giving them to the upper ranks first. He then asked Mashik how many archers and mages were with them. Mashik replied that there were 30 archers and 2 mages. Kim instructed those with sniping skills to take care of the long-ranged mobs and anyone with a shield to stop them from advancing, and then the battle began. Kim realized that they were stronger than he had thought, and the orange gates were different from others. However, they were not too much for a B rank like him to handle. As he slashed his sword at them, he noticed that those skeletons also had advanced spells, and he needed to grab their attention. Just then, a skeleton threw a bomb towards Kim, and Kim remarked that it was fine, because it was just a little sting, emphasizing that they should know that the gear he was wearing was very expensive. However, the boss arrived and attacked Kim. Hari was shocked to see that. A lady told Hari that they needed to save Kim and asked if they should call in the reserve forces for help. Hari thought that's what the reserve forces were for and that they needed to help them. However, they witnessed the giant sword swinging so fast, and they wondered how that was happening. She looked at Leon and thought that even though he was the king who defeated the great demon, she needed his help. He replied that a king should never join in a small battle like that. She asked what he meant. Leon replied that they should look for ways to build their honor, and he couldn't believe she would try to force him to help take on their damned bones. He added that it was rude to the goddess too, and he couldn't make himself watch that anymore.
Welcome to BMV Manhwa, your favorite place to watch manhwas. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy the content.